first on BBC One, a little later than originally billed, we rejoin the TARDIS for another adventure in time and space with Doctor Who. Hello, my name's Toby Haydock. You may recognise me from such televisual treats as Series 13, Episode 11 of Holby City and Edition 7209 of Coronation Street. Of course you don't, but I am, for better or worse, scattered throughout various Doctor Who-related releases like an epidemic of geekiness, and this special commentary track of Shada is no exception. And I say special because between you and I, dear listener, there wasn't supposed to be a commentary track for Shada. We were told there was no budget or resources for it, but we're doing one anyway. So the disclaimer in that regard is that the technical quality will almost be like we've done this on the fly when we can with limited equipment and an incompetent, wrangling it. Nonetheless, we hope it's better than the commentary track, which you could have had, which would have been like this for a couple of hours. So, buckle in, we're going to disparate sources, so the sound quality will vary. Hopefully there's plenty in here to distract you from any technical shortcomings that might have arisen from the fact that I did it. All right, so first up, an actor who does not live in the UK, so it was very important to us to grab as much time with him as we possibly could. It is, of course, Christopher Neame, aka Skagra, who, while he was over here recording his bits for the animation and recreating his performance, discussed his involvement with Doctor Who in the first part of this commentary track, which, by the way, none of this will relate to the pictures, as a lot of commentary tracks do, because as I record this, not all the pictures have been made yet, and those that had been made, well, where the interviews were taking place, there was nowhere to watch them on. So here is part one of my chat with Christopher Neame. I'm here with a man who's been a Doctor Who villain over the span of 40 years, because he started playing it 40 years ago and he's only just finished. So, Christopher Neame, welcome.
Yes, well, we were gung-ho about the first episode, obviously, and everything was going swimmingly. We were up in Cambridge, and I was wearing my funny hat and walking around Cambridge, looking rather strange, because I had just, in 1974, I just played Phoebe in the All Mail As You Like It, a production for the National Theatre all around America. So I didn't mind appearing in public looking rather strange. So that was fine, and I loved Cambridge, and terrific working with Lalla Ward, because I was at Central with her, Central School of Speech and Drama with her in 1969, 70, 71. She was in my year. And lovely to be with her again. And Tom, of course, he would just be Doctor Who, and one was the villain. No, I was very sad that we didn't complete it. And I'm so glad that now, finally, in 2017, we were able to complete it all. And to see everyone again in the studio was a complete delight, and I was very happy with what we've just finally achieved, and extremely grateful to be involved with the Doctor Who franchise, because it is a phenomenon. There's no question.
And had you, it's an almost unique position to be in as an actor, to pick up a performance that you have done 40 years ago. Had you remembered how you played the part?
No.
Did you have a look back at it?
No, not at all. All my acting has been instinctual. I've never been a method actor. Never, ever, ever. Not that I don't admire people like Daniel Day-Lewis who are method actors. I think that's an exceptional quality to have, but I've never been like that. I just instinctually kind of remembered how I did it, and it just came back on the day when we were in the studio. It just came back, and I was able to play it. Terrific dialogue, of course. Douglas Adams, tremendous dialogue. So that makes the actor's job so much easier when you have a really good script, because one doesn't have to think so much. One doesn't have to pad it with extras. You just you basically say the lines. And I didn't have to. I just came back to it as though it was yesterday.
The reason it was cancelled was because of unions at the BBC. And
that's right.
So perhaps as somebody that was there at those times, perhaps explain about that sort of situation at the BBC, and as an actor, how television was made, and unions sort of stopping shows was not uncommon, was it?
No, and a totally different situation now, of course. In those days, I remember when we shot Colditz, there was extensive rehearsal. I mean, it was just almost ludicrous when you think about it today, how fast they make movies now, and television especially. We'd rehearse for about a week, and then we'd have a technical rehearsal, and we'd be given notes. Then we'd have a final rehearsal, then we'd be given more notes. It was extraordinary. I mean, the amount of time, the amount of attention to detail that went into these series was extraordinary. I wasn't too involved with the union. But so when they said we can't do any more, there's a strike, and I just sort of took it for granted that, okay, well, on to the next thing. I wasn't quite aware of the extraordinary, phenomenal success that this franchise has been when I made that series, when I shot that first episode. But I could smell, I could taste. There was going to be, it was going to be hugely successful, because everyone fitted so well. Everyone's characters were so well defined.
Well, and I think if there's a hat like that in any production, you want to be the person wearing it.
Yeah.
And what about the rest of the cast? Dennis Carey and Daniel Hill. I mean,
lovely people. I mean, just so smashing. I saw Daniel Hill couple of days ago. It was as though we'd never said goodbye. Very, very charming man, and Lalla Ward, dear lady, splendid work she's doing now. The Actors' Home, Denville Hall. She's, I think she's the chairwoman of Denville Hall, the Actors' Home, and has really gotten that place together, and has brought in all sorts of extraordinarily healing qualities to that place. She's doing a wonderful, wonderful job. I think she's been there many, many, many years now, and it was lovely to see everyone again.
And what about the process of making? You alluded to the fact that rehearsal was commonplace for television, which it isn't now. So, do the audience lose out?
No, I think I don't know. I mean, it's so different now. I mean, I live in the United States. I live in California, and done a lot of television over there, and it's very, very, very fast. And I'm sure it is like that here now. But the only word that really comes to mind is kind of indulgent, really, of our rehearsal time then. But I think it cemented a certain kind of solidity into our performances, and hopefully it didn't take the spontaneity away. But all the actors were so good and so bright and so effervescent that on the day and at the moment we recorded, they would come up with some magic, so you can give something else when you're actually shooting it. It's all up to the actors, really.
Did it make a difference to you? Because obviously, looking at something like Shada, but all that television that you did in those days, location and certain special scenes are shot on film, and then everything else is done multi-camera in the studio. So did that affect how you pitched your performances at all? Different?
Not really. I mean, certainly, as I said, I'm a very instinctual actor, and I could take what we did, in the street to the studio and just sort of blend it together. No, I was perfectly happy with that, easy with that.
Well, we've changed location to the Lyric Theatre in Hammersmith to track down another member of the cast of Shada, who, had it just been a one-off gig, would probably have done it and forgotten all about it. But he's returned to the part a couple of times recently. So, who are you, sir?
I'm Daniel Hill, and I play Chris Parsons in Shada.
And how's it been reconnecting with Tom Baker and various cast members from yesteryear to pick up a job that was left hanging?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head, because it really was left hanging, and the last thing actors ever want to be is that, in any shape or form. It's horrible to be insecure about, what a project that you've invested in and, given so much time to, and it's a bit weird. And all of us, and it was also a very special project, and Douglas Adams' scripts were a bit special, and we all knew it when we read them. And when we got into rehearsals, we just thought, oh, this is great, and on film pre-studios. So when you're doing something special, it's a bit like having your sort of rattle taken away from you, and you don't ever really, you recover, in terms of the business, because you just get on with it, and you get more jobs. But there's always a little place in the back of your brain which is going, where's Shada gone? Where's Shada? And also, because I was a fan of Doctor Who as a kid, it felt very sort of spoiling to be in a Doctor Who and to actually go in the TARDIS and, and be the Doctor's assistant, really, albeit guest, but, to be the male assistant. And it was such a great part. And Chris Parsons, who I'm sure was loosely based on a bit of Douglas anyway, because of the Cambridge University angle, it was a really, really fantastic job. And so when we ended it wasn't great. It was really sad. It was a very sort of odd feeling, letting go of it. And so over the years, when they sort of came along and said, what about doing this with it, or doing that with it, or we're going to do a video and then we're going to do a DVD, etc., it never quite sort of went away. But there was never any completion about it, and that's what was so boring. No completion, no saying that really is it. But I think what we're doing now, or what we have done, is the closest they're ever going to get to it. It really is. And having seen the animation pre-drawings and seen a sort of very shortened version, sort of flip a version of them in action, I think it's extraordinary. I really do.
And how was it seeing Tom again after all these years?
Well, again, I was always very lucky that I had a fantastic relationship with Tom right from the word go. And so much so that when we were actually on film, he just kept saying to me, you can't be a postgraduate, you're more like an undergraduate, so why don't I make you an undergraduate? And Douglas won't mind. And I tell you what, I'm going to call you Bristol. And I said, because I'm from Bristol originally, and Tom liked that. He likes Bristol. And so all of those things that had kicked in, and I just had a ball with Tom. And when we did a DVD for the BBC of another Doctor Who story, and it was like, just going back, 5 minutes, and being back in the same studio with him was just brilliant. We sort of hit it off really well. And when we came to do Shada 2017, again, that was just brilliant. As actors, you if you have a sort of connection, you tend to really slip straight back into where you were, and you it's a bit like training with the same actor. When you work together, in '69, and then you work together again in '89 or 2009. Or 2019, you slip straight back to where you were, and that's fascinating. And I've been very fortunate in my career And I've done lots of long-running series, and some of them have been really enjoyable, and some of them have felt like entirely like hard work. But the really enjoyable ones are the ones where you're most challenged as an actor. And playing Doctor Who is to make it look as easy as what Tom made it look, and to do it with such style, and to put his own imprint onto that incredible character. That takes a huge amount of energy and talent. And when that's in place, it's a rhythm. And sometimes the rhythm, you join on the rhythm, like I did at playing Chris, and so I'm going to be with him for 3 months. But sometimes if you're, especially playing the Doctor, playing it as Tom did, sometimes the rhythm can go off a bit, because you can't keep it on the same one all the time. Sometimes it varies a bit, and sometimes someone else gets on, and that might be a bit of a jolt for a while. But I don't think there's a bad bone in his body. He's a great man, old Tom, and a wonderful actor to work with. He's entirely generous, and always wants to give everybody else more to do. It's a wonderful story about Tom, where any older actor who would be on the show, he would make sure that they got more to do. And he always used to say, even in the 3 months that I was on it, I love working with the older actors, he said, because they're always so grateful to be there. And I keep thinking, that's brilliant for a start, but B, I want to make it as much fun for them as possible. So I'll go to the writer and I'll say, give him a bit more. Go on, give him a bit more. Give him a bit more. He said, and the faces on those actors, when they're given those 5 or 10 extra lines or whatever extra scene, they beam. They beam because they're loving it. He said, and that means so much more to me. It's a great gift. And Tom has that gift. He's a real leading man. He's a great leading man. And, he's a great leading man as a theatre actor as well. And everybody, you can't get through 40, 50 years in the business without, at some point, being seen as a little bit tricky or a little bit, something or other that just doesn't gel with something that's happened at that time. But what people always forget is what else is happening in very public lives. And sometimes in very public lives, things get difficult and things get in the way, which pushes your natural playing rhythm and natural stuff out the window. And you're just spending a lot of time just trying to gather stuff together, get your thoughts together, and just trying to get through the day of what you're trying to do on a television show like Doctor Who, which has got this huge fan base, thank God, and just get through it and make it as best as you possibly can.
So do you remember, taking us back to the beginning of your involvement with it,
Yeah.
do you remember how you got the part?
Yes, I do. I do remember it very clearly. I can see myself now. I'd been rung up the day before by my agent, and they said, go and see Pennant Roberts, who's doing this thing. I didn't know who Pennant was. And anyway, so I got to main reception at Television Centre, and a lovely girl who was on the counter was called Linda. Very nice, and she was. The good thing about Television Centre was, if you were good to the ladies on the front desk, they had the power of the dressing room keys. So if you were in a terrible dressing room, Linda could get you a good one. So that's a good point. Not that you'll be able to use it now. Anyway, so so I got to main reception, and they had some sides for me to read, and so I was just about to go upstairs, and a lady passed me and gave him a big smile. Didn't know from Adam, but so I got in the lift, got up to 5th floor, I think it was 5th floor, and went into the room with Pennant. Hit it up with him really well. Read a few scenes. He said, blah blah said blah blah about you, and blah blah said blah, and well, you go away and I'll see some other people and we'll see what we'll do. So I got back into the lift, went downstairs, lift doors open, and there in front of me was the same lady. And she went, oh, hello. And I said, oh, hello, hi. And she went, oh, bye. And the lift doors closed. Anyway, I went off home, thought, there we are. Got the bus back to Fulham, and I shared a flat with Pan's people, which will mean very little to some people, but to other people will mean something.
With all of them?
No, I shared a flat with Ruth. Nothing. There was no sort of partnership or anything. We were just, I had one of the bedrooms in this 2-bedroom flat, and we shared, everything else. And another one lived downstairs. One of Legs and Co. And anyway, so I made myself a cup of tea and went out for a walk. And about an hour later, my agent rang me up and he said, "You got the job." And I said, "Oh God, that was quick." And anyway, what I didn't realise was the lady I'd seen downstairs when I was going in, not Linda, who was on reception, one of the receptionists, was actually a woman called Bethan. And Bethan, I think it was Bethan. It was Pennant Roberts' wife.
Betsan.
Betsan, lovely, beautiful, wonderful Betsan. And Betsan had apparently seen me and went upstairs and went into the room. After I seen her getting, as I was getting out of the lift and she was getting in, she went straight up to Pennant because they were meeting for lunch, and she said, "Have you cast that part?" And he said, "Yeah, well, I think I have." And she said, "There's a bloke who was downstairs, and he's an actor. I know he is. He's downstairs. He's in reception, and I saw him. And he's exactly right for it." And Pennant went, "Was this him?" And she went, "That's him." She showed my photograph and went, "Oh, I'm just about to give him the job." And that's how I got it.
Nice.
Yeah, that's how I got it. Yeah.
Well, you met another lady on the job.
I certainly did.
So tell us about that.
Olivia was Olivia Bazalgette was the production assistant, which was sort of continuity and taking shot lists and also making sure that the actors don't get their continuity wrong when you're changing a shot from one angle to another. You've got to make sure that you're doing the same thing in each shot. And Olivia, who was a very bubbly, I think she was about 19 at the time actually, it was her first job in television, and we got on like house on fire, and nothing happened there and then, but we were really, really, really great mates, great mates. And we've now been married for, we've been married for nearly 31 years, and we've been together for about 34.
Wow.
So yeah, it's not bad, is it?
So that's why
Not
you're
bad.
fond of Shada.
That's right, very fond of Shada, very, very fond of Shada. Yeah, no, that's right, very much so. Yeah, she's a darling girl and very talented as well. Yeah, she went off to do lots of posh things, much posher than me, in more ways than one.
So you started off with the pre-filming in Cambridge.
Yeah.
So every actor likes a job that gives them a stint on location.
Yeah, fantastic. And Cambridge, I didn't really know Cambridge very well, but I sort of fell in love with it the moment I sort of went there. It's just such a glorious set. The whole place is like a giant set. And at that time, they didn't like people filming there. They hated the fact that film crews thought they could just turn up and take over a college or beyond the back, they just didn't like it. But because Douglas had been there and he had a very good relationship with his college, we were allowed to use, I think it was the backs, and to do a bit of filming in Clare or at Clare Bridge. And we had this idyllic 10 days, and we were filming in Grantchester Meadows and all over the shop, and punting on the river, and of course Olivia and I were getting on like house on fire, and great fun. And also because I'd only left drama school a couple of years before, we were roughly the same age, and it was just a great laugh. We had such great fun.
And Billy Bunter.
But you can imagine, can't you, that if you think of, for a certain age of actor, and I used to watch Billy Bunter in black and white on telly, and so when I saw it was Jerry also used to run a club called Jerry's, which was a sort of after-hours drinking club. It was legal because it was a club, and lots of actors used to go and drink there. And I was introduced to it by someone else, and this is before he was working on Doctor Who. I've never had such a big drink in my life. I was sort of staggering around Shaftesbury Avenue trying to get back home after it. But Jerry was an extraordinary bloke, and he couldn't believe it. He said, "I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I am. He said, all this time and money just to get me to do this. But Tom used to go to Jerry's and knew Jerry very well from there. And he was a lovely man, old Jerry. Lovely. Jerry Campion. Yeah, gorgeous. Lovely man. Great man.
And then you start the studio as normal.
Yeah, we started it as normal. And I must say, Victoria Burgoyne, who is an Amazon. She's an Amazon. She is 6 foot and stunningly good looking and drove a Cadillac to work. I've never met one since. I'd never met an actor or actress who drove a Cadillac to work. And the first day that we were rehearsing in North Acton, I turned up in the car park. I got the tube. And I was walking to the car park and I went, what's that silver blue or silver blue-green car? My God, it was so glamorous. And somebody said, it's a Cadillac. And I said, who gets paid enough to actually drive a Cadillac into the BBC car park? And it was Victoria. And I went upstairs and she said, oh, have you been admiring my Cadillac? I said, how do you afford to get a Cadillac? She went, oh, darling, I need a big car. I'm so tall. But yeah, no, she was wonderful. I love old Vicky. She's a lovely girl. Yeah, they were all lovely on it, actually. Yeah, it's great. It's a great show. And Chris Neame, it's a gorgeous man. Great bloke. Really good actor as well. Terrific.
And so you're in the studio having fun, and you've not worked with Pennant before.
We rehearsed it.
Find him as a director?
Great. Yeah, really good director of Pennant. Lovely, great chap. And I went on to do Tenko with him afterwards. Not playing one of the girls. I was only in the first 2 episodes. And when he rang me up I'll tell you this quickly. He rang me up and he said, Dan, I'm sorry to ring you at home. He said, but I've got a job for you. And I said, oh, Penn. And I'd been out the night before and I was a little bit hungover. And I said, oh, Penn. He said, do you want me to come in and meet you? And he went, no. He said, it's a straight offer. And it's to do Tenko. And I said, Kenko? he said, yeah, that's right. And I said, Kenko? And he went, no, Tenko. And I said, oh, right, okay. I said, all right, well, you better ring my agent. You better tell him. And he went, yeah, I will. He said, but do you want to do it? And I said, well, I better read the scripts. And he went, you get to go to Singapore. And I went, just book me. It's true. Anyway, yeah. So we rehearsed in studio. And because it was I think we did a 3-day studio, you had to rehearse for 10 days in order to do that. So that's longer than a half-hour show would normally rehearse. You'd rehearse for 6 days for a half-hour show, like a sitcom. So we did all that rehearsal, did our tech run, producers run, got into the studio, very exciting, very, very, very exciting. And that all went very well. Then went back to North Acton and started rehearsing for the second block. And we again arrived at studio and were all made up, and we'd done a camera rehearsal, I think, in the morning, a bit of it. And then we went to lunch. I may have got this wrong, but I think we went to lunch, came back, and the doors were locked. They had sort of like manacles on them. It was sort of weird. It felt like a sort of visual effects. I'd had a sort of bad lunch and thought, let's put that on, and they'll sort of dissolve after lunch. And we all went, oh, what's going on? And they said, oh, there's a strike. And we said, oh, there can't be. And they went, no, there is. So don't worry, go and have a coffee and we'll decide what we're going to do. To cut a very long story short, we then went back. They decided they'd go on rehearsing for the next block. So now we were carrying 3 studio days worth of stuff, and we were then rehearsing the final block. And we got to the end of the final block and did a run-through of everything. So we did about 5 or 6 days worth of material, and that's a hell of a lot. That's probably 2 hours worth of actual on-screen stuff. And everybody was saying, gosh, it really is fantastic. It's such a great show. And not just the actors who wanted everybody to compliment them. Everyone. Tex and everybody. What a great way to end the last 6-part Doctor Who. Well, we'll pick this all up, as the producer said. We're going to pick it all up We're going to try and do it before Christmas, and or we'll do it in January, but it will be picked up, so don't worry. So that was that. And we then left, went and had a drink round the corner, and then went for a meal. And that was really the last time that we were all together. And it felt really odd, because when you have last, production meals at the end of your show, wrap meals as we call them, it's sad, but it's happy because you hopefully had a good time, and the show's completed and done. And we all were like, whoa, what's going on? And when January came and went, I think we all got a letter saying we've been stuffed, basically, and because a new producer was coming in, John Nathan Turner, who'd been the production unit manager on the Doctor Who before and now was series producer, he wanted to have a fresh start and get on with it. And so it was never picked up. And nobody could believe it. And I was lucky that I worked and had worked a lot for the BBC, and I was doing about 6 months of every year of my career, for them. I was so lucky, and still am. And I went into the bar at Television Centre when I was doing another show, and Michael E. Bryant, who was one of the directors on Doctor Who, not with me, but he'd worked with me a lot on things like Blood Money and different things like Secret Army. He said, "Oh, Dan," he said, "you look a bit miserable." And I said, "Oh, it's just a bit rough." I said, "Because I did this Doctor Who, and it was really, really good, Mike." And he said, "Did they pay you?" And I went, "Yeah." And he went, "Oh, don't worry." And I said, "Well, no, it's not that. It was a really, really great show. It was a great show." You don't really get over those things. There's a little place in your brain which has, it's like a great long corridor with all these dressing rooms off it, which are different shows that you've been in. And each one has all the characters that, all the character you played, maybe with a couple of other characters, you're really fond of. And Chris Parsons is very much one of those. And it was a big deal when you were a young actor, especially if you were playing a great part, which Chris Parsons is and was. But yes, so that's sadly where we got to that sort of first conclusion of Shada, but premature conclusion.
Yeah, because it's had more lives, but we finally. So and when you did the recording session in London with Lala and James Coombs, you worked with elsewhere.
Well, I did, yeah, because we did. Shada was his first job, I think, and he was playing one of the Krargs.
Welcome to the business. Your first job.
Krargs,
doesn't happen.
Well, he's too good looking, too handsome. No, he's he looks like James Bond. For those people who don't know old James.
And fact fans was the Milk Tray Man.
Absolutely right, and rightly so. But he's a lovely chap, old James, and he's Welsh, and I'm half Welsh, and half Irish, and a bit English, and. But James is a real character. We worked together back at my old stomping ground at Bristol, at the Bristol Old Vic company. And I trained at the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, so that was great. It was like being back home. And James was there, and we were doing a new play together about Thomas Chatterton. So we go back a long way. Yeah.
But
yeah.
Did you? But you weren't have met on Shada originally.
No. Well, we did, because he would have rehearsed in North Acton. Right, all the Krarg stuff. He would have been there as the main actor, and then the supporting actors who played the other Krargs or Cybermen or whatever, but in that show, the Krargs, they would have been there, and they would have followed James really, and sort of he would have been there to sort of lead them as the actor, to tell them what to do and where they should go, apart from obviously lovely old Ralph Wilton directing as well, but big fan of James, lovely chap, and very nice.
And how difficult is it to
play a part that you've done before? Did you go back to the original, look at that to pick up, or Chris Parsons, was he still in there?
Do you know what? It was really, really, it was extraordinary. You have a sort of a thing in your back of your head of what you think it is, and then you watch yourself on not just the tapes that have been cut, but the brilliant Charles Norton and everybody else at BBC Worldwide were extraordinary in getting hold of all the tapes that we'd actually, all the recorded tapes. So, the studio footage, not cut footage, studio footage. And because studio footage is like, any old-fashioned, but double, so 2-inch tape, it's extraordinary because you're watching yourself running up to record. And for anybody who doesn't know how that sort of system worked, it's like being on film, but it's different because you've rehearsed, well, certainly in our case, you've rehearsed all of the stuff. It's more like you're going to do your first night and your last night all in one. So it had a mixture of not theatricality, hopefully, but you have so many cameras that you're playing 2 and 4 that you are in this extraordinary position where you've rehearsed everything. You've got to be on certain marks and you've got to be in certain places, and then you play the scene. And in your head, certainly for me, and most actors are a bit anxious, certainly for me, I kept thinking, this is going to be all right. You've done all this, but it's going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible. Why are you breathing so heavily? Your heart's beating so fast. Do you think that's going to be good? Oh my goodness. And Ralph now is counting down. Okay, everybody, quiet in the studio. Here we go. Okay, and it's 10. And I'm going, oh God, this is a nightmare. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And then you go, and Ralph goes, and 3, 2, 1, and then waves his finger, and the scene starts. And so that's what it's like when you're in the studio. But then 38 years later, I'm watching with Tom, watching myself and looking so hard to see if I'm showing any signs of all that going on. And there's nothing. I can't see a thing. And yet inside, I know from years and years of doing it, I was like, whoa, I'm going to be terrible. This is going to be terrible. And then I start acting. And I think, if they knew what I was thinking when I was doing that scene, people would not believe it. They would not believe it. And there it is. And you start, well, Doctor. But Doctor, what are we doing, Doctor? What's that? Professor Chronotis, probably. And Ralph goes, right, that's it, everybody. Okay, stop the scene. Just checking back the recording. Okay, and yep, we're clear on that. Moving on, and you're off. But it was great. It was great. It was great studios. I mean, come on. What more does any sane human being want than to be in the TARDIS, or to be in the TARDIS, in the box, in Professor Chronotis' room, to be running around, the planets. I mean, what do you want? I was a 23-year-old child. It was phenomenal.
Well, and playing a good role of that size for a young man. I mean, you hit the ground running, really, didn't you?
I was very lucky. Yeah, I was. I was really lucky. Really lucky. And I loved it. I really loved it. So I was very, as I said, to sort of pull it all together, it was a very... Yeah, it sort of hit me quite hard, and not because I've been on telly and and telly's always been kind to me, but it was a very special project, and I know that we all felt that way. And when everybody was pulled together to do all this stuff now, and I'm hoping that the green screen stuff that we did, I'm hoping that, in the extras bit, there's going to be a bit of that stuff, which I know we've got somewhere, haven't we, Toby?
Yeah.
Because it's very interesting to see just what's happening with the green screen, how we did certain things. But the investment that we all made and the BBC made and production made in that show bears out that every single person who is still alive was there. And, and Christopher Neame, great, lovely actor, terrific bloke, had come all the way from America, and he's there. Lala's there, and Tom is, there, and I'm there, Victoria's there, and James Coombs is there, and even the lady Shirley Dixon, who played the voice of the ship, was there, and all the way, right the way down, and everybody was there. It really was very special. It was very interesting that when we actually were all there doing our bit in that tiny studio up in North London, the energy in the room was just like being in Television Centre. But, but we were recording on microphones. But the energy in the room was like a recording of a television show in studio 38 years ago. And I think, what the animation is going to do, and what us coming together and doing our voices and doing the green screen and getting getting me as Chris Parsons on the green screen. And the last time I was on green screen was Harry Potter, and that was in the Ministry of Magic. And when I walked on the Ministry of Magic set, it's acres and acres and acres, but even they had a green screen at the end of the studio. But their green screen was probably about 200 foot by about 100. Massive. But I have to say, finishing the Doctor Who, even though I'm the biggest Harry Potter fan, and my great friend David Barron was one of the main producers on it, and that's why I ended up getting a part on it. Even so, finishing Shada 2017 was a bigger highlight for me. It was an essential completion, and I'm so thrilled that not only us, but everybody's going to get a chance to see it without having to have brilliant Tom doing his interlinking bits, and without any apologies, and just saying, this is it. This is it. This is the closest you're going to get to it. Apart from, us, doing CGI and things, this is the closest you're ever going to get to it. And hopefully, I don't know where they are with the broadcast things, but maybe sometime in the future that will happen as well, because that would be even better. But I'm weird to see my younger self, younger actor self, acting better than me, actually.
Well,
yeah, that's not hard.
You've done everything you can. You've seen yourself in the studio, recreated the part.
Yeah.
But if you could do the impossible, which is speak to that 23-year-old actor, what would you tell him?
I would say, I'd say, now look, I'd get hold of him and I'd give him a jolly good shake, and I say, you know what? It's all fine. Everything's fine. It's all good. It's all good. If people crept into actors' brains when they're just about to record the most serious or the most hysterical thing, they would be amazed at what's going on. It's like you don't want to go there. You seriously don't want to go. No sensible doctor would ever want to go there.
Thanks to Daniel for his memories and for his enthusiasm. And now let's check in again with Christopher Neame and expand the conversation beyond Doctor Who, but to nonetheless very interesting areas as he discusses the many elements of his fascinating career.
Doctor Who aside, you have had what could be called a fair heft of genre credits, shall we say. So shall we start with the horror movies? Lust for a Vampire, Dracula, AD 1972?
Yes, I was very young and fairly inexperienced. And having the chance to work with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, the royalty, was a great treat, and I do remember having my fangs fitted. There was a special dentist in London where you'd go to have your fangs fitted, and the dentist, it seems to me, the dentist himself realized that we were all going to be having such fun, on the set. He didn't want to miss out, so he would be quite theatrical himself. He would make the impression for your fangs, and then he'd sort of spend an awful lot of time behind the chair, and then sort of pounce out from behind the chair with these fangs in his hand and scare you. It was I'll never forget that. But no, it was great, and terrific cast in Dracula AD 72, and Michael Kitchen, Caroline Munro, Marsha Hunt, Stephanie Beecham, Janet Key, who, bless her, sadly is not with us anymore. Wonderful. I loved it, and I learned so much from Christopher Lee and indeed Peter Cushing. I do remember Peter Cushing. He was a smoker, which was allowed on the set in those days, and he wouldn't get any nicotine on his fingers. He would, in between takes, he would sit down in his deck chair and pull out his white gloves from a little pocket on the chair, and very carefully put these white gloves on and smoke his cigarette, very calm, very relaxed. Then take his gloves off and put them back in the pocket in his chair and go back to do a scene. Very tough man. We had a lot of fight scenes together, Peter and I, and indeed one very long fight scene. He was strong as an ox, I remember, and he was in his 80s then, at least 80, 85, I think. Very strong man, and he just lost his wife, who they doted on each other. They were just an extraordinarily close couple. And he was very, 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 very sad during the movie. And he said at the end of the movie to all of us, because we were all very young, he said, "You young people have really pulled me through this time. It was just a delight to work with you, and thank you so much. You've helped me heal to a great extent." And that was the greatest compliment he could have paid for this. I loved it. I loved doing that film, and it's become a cult picture. I live in the United States, and I was in New Jersey the other day at a convention, and people just flocked to us. Caroline Munro was there, just to say how much they enjoyed the film, and they're still enjoying it, and brought all these autographs and pictures, record covers, books, you name it, they brought everything to be signed, and it was just like meeting old friends. I had no idea that it was going to be quite so successful, but it was a phenomenon, really.
And do you have a taste for science fiction and horror? And
not really, I must be honest. I really don't. The books I read, I must admit, are all biographies, and real life stories. I get very turned on by adventure stories, people, pushing themselves to great lengths, and experiencing events that they never thought they were humanly possible in experiencing. No, I'm not into fiction, funnily enough. I don't read fiction. I go to sleep when I read fiction. But I've been very blessed and very happy to have been involved in fiction in my career, because obviously everything I've done has been fiction. But when I read personally, I like to read adventure stories of real life people,
Well, and you did a fair amount of adventuring at the BBC. I mean, two television shows that stick out, I think, are both Colditz and Secret Army, which you were a regular in both. So you were not unknown to the BBC studios in the 1970s.
Yes. Colditz really was my second television job. I left the Central School of Speech and Drama in Swiss Cottage in London in 1971. Colditz was my second job. My first television job ever was The Shadow of the Tower, with James Maxwell playing Henry the Seventh, yes, Henry the Seventh. That's right. I was one of the princes in the tower, or something.
Earl of Warwick, were you?
Earl of Warwick. I can't remember, so long ago, but it was lovely. And Richard Warwick was with us, dear Richard Warwick, who I just adored, who's no longer with us. He was my god. I think he was my god. But anyway, that was Joan Kemp Welsh directed that, an extraordinarily talented old-time director who was very, very experienced. She'd done everything, in television, and she directed that. And then I do remember Gerard Glaister was producing Colditz, and he wanted to see me for this part of a submarine lieutenant. Joan told me that Jerry Glaister called her to say, "Can he do it?" and Joan said, "He certainly can." And I remember auditioning for Jerry Glaister, and I was fiercely ambitious in those days, fiercely ambitious. I really wanted this movie, this part in this TV series, and not knowing in any way how successful it was going to be. I had no idea. It became a phenomenon. And I do remember there was one little hiccup when Jerry Glaister looked at me and he said, "But you're a bit tall to be a submarine lieutenant. Maybe you're going to bang your head a lot." And I said, No. I immediately took my shoes off and tried to shrink down as much as I could. And he gave me the role. And I was with David McCallum and Robert Wagner and Richard Hefford and all sorts of smashing actors and Hans Meyer, Bernie Hepton, and great. I just adored it.
I remember one episode which concentrates where you actually escape. And you really go through it, and you get to the American embassy, and they won't help you, and you end up going back to Colditz. And I've just got an image of you covered in rain and shivering and knackered, and it's an episode where it's pretty much on you for the whole thing.
Yes, I do remember that, and I do remember, yes, being in the BBC bar after filming that episode, downing copious amounts of alcohol, and everyone very sweetly coming up to me and sort of banging me on the shoulder. Fantastic, it was wonderful, all that sort of thing. I gave it everything, I gave it everything. I knew that this was my big one chance to shine, and I went gung-ho into it. No, it was a terrifically well-written episode, and it was a great chance for me, and hopefully I sort of fit the bill.
And do any of those directors you worked with at the BBC spring to mind as ones that you particularly enjoyed working with?
Yes, they were all terrific in their own right. I can't remember anyone's names now, of course, but they were all very special and very nurturing. I do remember there was never any sort of hostility on the set. It was all very very creative process, and our ideas were usually sort of seriously considered, and no, it was a very healthy set, I do remember. And because there was so much time allotted to discovering our parts, there was never any pressure a lot of the shows I've done in California, the time is of essence, and everyone's pushing you to get a move on and just do it, you know. Which, you know, it can work, as you see from a lot of American television. It's brilliant stuff, but it's a totally different way of shooting. No, it was a very, very, very creative, healthy process that we went through, and I'm blessed to experience that, I must say.
Well, and they must have been very happy with you, because Joel Glaister then puts you in Secret Army, which is, if anything,
Yes.
was an even bigger success than Colditz.
Yes, with Jan Francis and Bernie Hampton again. And no, I love that, and especially researching for the role, I met a lot of courageous, extremely courageous people who'd been on that line, you know, the rescue line, if you will. I met a lot of people who had actually been there and done that, and they were riveting. Their stories were utterly riveting, and it gave us a lot of backbone for our characters.
And some terrific actors. I remember that you had a great episode in that with Peter Barkworth as a sort of English author who's you have to go back and kill because he's seen as a bit of a traitor. I mean, the sort of quality actors that you saw on television just in weekly episodic drama was extraordinary.
Yes, it was. I was very, very lucky to be involved.
You've done a lot of work in the States. So what was it that, work-wise, that took you out to the States?
Well, I just left the Royal Shakespeare Company in 1983, and I'd done a year with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and they hadn't offered me. It was quite extraordinary, actually. It was a bit of a boondoggle. I just done a year with them, and I loved it. I loved being there. The creative process is extraordinary at the RSC. So my agent got me an episode of By the Sword Divided. I played a rather sort of evil witch finder who was eventually dispatched. And soon as I got that episode, the RSC came up with something for me to do. But the dates clashed, so I couldn't do it. So I was not able to rejoin the RSC. So I do remember one day I was commiserating with my friend at the time, Jack Lynn, who he was a producer with Knightsbridge Management, who was a very good friend of mine. I said, "Oh, Jack, you know, as actors do, oh, Jack, I'm out of work, I don't know what I'm going to do, you know, the world's collapsing." He said, "Well, I think I know about this role. I think there's a role available in A Patriot for Me, John Osborne play that's going to Los Angeles very shortly, starring Alan Bates, who created the role in Chichester and then went to the Haymarket. And it's going to Los Angeles on a short tour." And he said, "Well, go and meet the director." So I went and met the director, Ronald Eyre. Ronald said, come on board." And so I went to Los Angeles with A Patriot for Me. I met my now wife in the company, in the American part of the company. I just thought, well, here I am. And I had no intention of staying in Los Angeles whatsoever. Absolutely none. I thought I'd go over there, make a bit of money, come back. But I thought, well, hey, you know, the universe has dealt me this hand. So let's go with it. And I was very lucky because my agent got me some work almost immediately. Robert Wagner, who was in Colditz with me, gave me my first job. He found out I was in town, gave me my first job, and I was off and running, for which I will always be grateful to him for. Charming man. I really, really liked him. I met Natalie Wood in Acton, where we rehearsed Colditz. He brought her up in the elevator at one point, and she just was utterly stunning, of course. And he just brought her up to introduce her to us. And I met Natalie then, and and Robert very, very kindly gave me that role, and which started my Hollywood career. And for 20 years, I worked consistently, and just happened completely out of the blue.
And did it take much readjustment as an English actor used to the English way of doing things to the setup in the States?
Sometimes, I must admit, sometimes they said, well, Christopher, it's a little bit English. Could you just make it a bit more American, you know? So I'd have to try my best. But no, I mean, it was quite strange. I mean, when I think about it now, I mean, I do remember I was out in the desert in Namibia with Patrick Swayze after he'd just finished Dirty Dancing, and it hadn't been the extraordinary success that it became. It hadn't really come out, and he'd just finished filming, and so he was twiddling his thumbs. So this movie called Steel Dawn was offered to him, and I played the protagonist. I played yet again the villain, and I do remember this big fight scene, and he was in incredible shape. So I knew as soon as I was offered the role as the protagonist, I knew I'd have to get myself into shape, because I couldn't be this little shrimp fighting Patrick Swayze in this sort of futuristic movie. So I went to Vince's gym on Ventura Boulevard in Studio City, LA, and worked out with this guy. Actually, it was a girl who worked me out. She was extraordinary. She was like sort of Miss Universe, and she really, really kicked my rear, got me into extraordinary shape. I was all sort of ripped, and and I had this sort of Tina Turner wig, and we were dressed in strips of leather out in the desert. They wanted the sand dunes out in Namibia, so that's why we went out there. And I remember, Patrick and I sort of faced off before this final fight scene, at the end of the movie, and I just thought, it's extraordinary. Life is extraordinary. Here I am facing off with this Texas cowboy, and here I am standing next to him. I almost started giggling. I just thought, this is so ridiculous. But I sort of kept my sort of rather fierce face and did the fight with him. It was a very extensive sort of big fight, and of course I lost. And Patrick was a dear, absolute dear. I mean, he knew, I think, that Dirty Dancing was going to be huge, and he was really quite proud of it, and was quite... he was quite the boss on the set, that's for sure. But he was very considerate to me, and was very kind to me, and his lovely wife was there as well. And no, that was lovely. But I've been very blessed with my career in Hollywood. I worked consistently and met some extraordinary people, and people were very good to me, and I had an exceptional time. I was very lucky. I had some very good chances, and it just completely sort of exploded my world, because who knows if I'd stayed in London, who knows what would have happened, I don't know, but I was, the universe put me in Hollywood, and to experience that circus, really. I mean, it is a circus, but if you play the game, then it can be a magical time, and I do feel I did have a magical time there.
Well, you've seen the universe. You've done Star Trek. I mean, that's another sort of famous cult show to be part of, and Star Wars video games. I mean, video games is an interesting, sort of relatively new sphere for actors, isn't it?
Yes. Star Wars, yes, and. Babylon 5, I did.
5,
yes. Yeah, but no, that was great, and no, I enjoyed that. Very good writing again, almost sort of Doctor Who style writing.
Which again has its own band of aficionados. What do you make of the sort of the science fiction fans that you encounter? Because it's quite a phenomenon, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is
a growing one almost.
It is, and they're just so fanatically sort of tied into it all, and and they're just they just love it so much. It makes their lives richer, and they have all these posters with thousands of signatures on these posters, and you just add your signature, and it makes their day, and you see them smile, and they're just so happy to meet you, and it's a service, I just think, actors are in the, are in the service industry, if you will. I mean, I just think it's, I think it's terrific what actors do. I was just thinking the other day, getting quite introspective. I was thinking, what have I really done in my life, And you think, well, hopefully I've made people a little happier. Out of the blue, I got this fan letter from a U.S. Submarine captain. Out of the blue, it just totally blew me away. It was a very genuine fan letter, and he said, Chris, I can't remember it verbatim, but it said, Chris, I've been out here, in the Indian Ocean, with my men for many months now. We're just sort of, whatever we're doing, I can't remember what they were doing, but, and he said, we get a lot of hours of long boredom, but I've been watching television and movies that we bring on board with us, and I've watched a lot of your stuff, and it's really helped me get through this time, because we don't have an awful lot to do when we're not working, and I so appreciate what you've given us in your performances. I was completely knocked sideways. I was so deeply touched by this. There was no way I could reply to him and say how touched I was, but it was extraordinary, and I certainly made my day. I've had some lovely letters from people too, from all over the world, and it makes me happy that I was able to lift their lives.
So, well, look, I've taken up a lot of your time, so let me. First, tell me about, because we did talk before we started recording. Tell me about your unique place in television history and filming in Sardinia on a very memorable job.
Oh, yes. A point in time. A creation by an extraordinarily young gentleman called Carlos Pacini, an Italian fellow director and writer, who persuaded a Granada producer called James Brabazon to film this. It was a TV film. It was about an artist who I played, who had lost his mojo, if you will, and he couldn't really get it together, creatively. So he went to he goes to a museum and sees this picture of Hieronymus Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights, famous picture, famous painting, and literally walks through the painting and experiences everything in the painting, which, as your listeners will know, is an extraordinary work of art. And we shot this in Sardinia, and probably the best job of my life, because for many reasons. The mafia were very it's tough on the island at the time. They owned the island, basically. They had it all locked up, and everywhere we went, the villagers who were who would do nothing wrong to piss off the mafia, obviously, insisted on giving us a picnic every time. Every location, they'd come out and give us this picnic with copious amounts of wine. And so we got stuck into the picnic and the wine. we felt obliged to do this, otherwise we'd piss off the mafia, which wasn't very wise. So we'd shoot from sunup to about midday and then get absolutely legless. We shot in these beautiful locations, and so it was not an exactly arduous job, especially when love, lust, and vanity, three gorgeous models from Rome showed up, and we had some scenes together, and I don't know. I don't think I need go any further than that. I think I can leave the rest to your listeners' imagination. But it was wonderful. It was a wonderful, wonderful job. And there was one scene where I had to take all my kit off and walk into a lake, and then appear from the lake and reborn and completely sort of starkers. And so I received the rather dubious accolade of being the first totally full frontal nude on British television, which has haunted me to this day. And as I walk around Covent Garden, but it was a wonderful, wonderful job, of course.
Thanks to Christopher, who I spoke to at quite some length, and my Who's Round podcast, which is available online and is a charitable endeavour for which I have interviewed about 250 different people involved in the worlds of Doctor Who, also features some extra bonus material with Chris that he was kind enough to give his time for. Now, it's not all about the people that were there back in the day when Shada was supposed to have been completed, because somebody had to pick up the baton where it was left, and that includes a team of animators, two of whom I spoke to, Martin Geraghty and Anne-Marie Walsh, to tell me all about the work they had done and were still doing. So, I guess, Anne-Marie, the first thing to sort of talk about, because you weren't on the Power of the Daleks DVD, but you got involved with this via that. So talk us through how you came to be on this project, but if you want to take us through your journey through Power of the Daleks as well, I'm sure that's of interest to the listener.
Yes, so I first worked with Charles on Power of the Daleks last year, which was tremendous fun. And he rang me in November and asked me to get involved in this Douglas Adams script of Shada, which I was thrilled about, as I'm a big Douglas Adams fan. And we went from there.
And what about you, Martin? I mean, you must, obviously, as a big-time Doctor Who fan, was the world ready for another Shada?
Well, I think so. Yeah, it's nice to complete this in a way that's going to be appreciated by people, I think, and with the same actors involved, or most of the same actors involved who appeared in it in 1979. And I think it is missing. This is going to be as complete a version as I think we're ever going to have. So yeah, why not?
And so we are at the disadvantage because we aren't talking to pictures here. You, listener, have an advantage over us because you can see the completed work. As we discuss this, what stage are you at with the animation as we discuss this in October 2017?
We are currently about 2 weeks away from finishing all of the animation, and then we're animating Martin's fantastic characters in a program called Flash, which is a 2D animation program. We draw up Martin's designs, and then we move the characters around, drawing up additional shapes as we need them, such as new hand shapes and clothes and everything else. And then we work with Adrian Salmon, David and Alan, who are doing a second layer of shading on all of the characters to give them a more complete, distinct and 3D look. And the animators will switch across and help them when we finish our animation.
Well, and of course, that's of no use timelines-wise in the way that I have couched this by saying it's now October 2017. So when did you start work on the project?
I started in June. Martin would have started before me, designing the characters.
Yes, I think February I started being pulled on board, I think.
Yes, yeah. So in June I started drawing up some of Martin's designs in what we call character kits. And then the animators started 3 days after I started drawing up the character kit, so not a huge amount of pre-production time. But that has meant that all of the animators have had to do a lot more drawing, and we've relied upon their skills. And every animator has brought something different to the table, so it's been really exciting watching the animation coming through.
Yes,
there's some really beautiful work.
I think this differs. My part of the process in this has differed from Power in that I'm just doing the pencil designs for the characters in this one, whereas in Power I was inking them as well. But Anne-Marie and the team have been very much on board in creating the line work for what I've initially done, and there's a far greater input on the side of the animators, certainly in terms of character design and sort of physical attributes of the characters than there was on Power.
Yeah.
Well, Power seemed to me to be something that sort of flew out of the traps and was on the shelves before you knew it. So was that quite a stressful undertaking?
It was an incredibly tight deadline for the amount of work we were trying to do. It was, it was fabulous to be involved in it. But I'm very glad that we've had a lot more time on Shada to do much more finished animation. And have more time with the characters to really try to get into the characters. We used a lot of the original footage as reference to understand what the actors were bringing to the roles, and reading the script, and through that and director's notes try to imbue the still drawings with a real sense of what the actors were about and what Douglas Adams was trying to get across.
Well, now I've been online and looking at sort of fan anticipation of this, and one of the big worries that are being expressed, say, in the forums, people are going, but how much will it jar between... Because it's an unusual... Power of the Daleks is entirely animated.
Correct.
Whereas this is, you're asking the viewer to be watching something made on BBC, in a BBC studio in the 1970s, and then suddenly you've got leaping to animation. So what do you have to be conscious of when doing this rather bespoke and unusual thing of having a production that is in two different mediums?
It is a jump, and it's asking something of the audience to go with that. But I think a lot of it is down to your character design, Martin. You've managed to keep them very, very true to the actors.
Well, hopefully.
So it's very clear. I think it's very clear as to who the animated character represents when you are leaping between the different media.
And there's some of the shots aren't featuring the same actors, so you'll cut from one shot. We're not kind of creating a shot halfway through a scene. Mm-hmm. We're cutting between scenes, and so there's a natural break. And there's certain elements of direction that Charles and the storyboard artists have put in, whereby a particular scene will end, a filmed live action scene will end, and then we'll try and mirror an element of it into the animated shot that begins. In particular, for example, there's one scene where Claire Keithley is sitting down in a chair and that in a particular pose, and then that cuts to another scene with Romana in a chair. So we tried to mirror that scene, so it gives a kind of symmetry to the shot.
And creating hookups between the live action and the animation where we can. So
then fading from a colour, maybe fading from I think the introduction of Chris fades from the sky, a shot of the sky in the live action, and then comes down and Chris is cycling along. So there are ways of sort of sliding the viewer into accepting it, really.
And so what about your process? When you started the project, what did you, Anne-Marie? What were your initial things that you had to do, and then talk to me about bringing other people into the process after your massive 3-day pre-production that you had.
I worked quite closely with Martin so he designed the characters, as you said, in pencil, and we did explore a number of different line strengths and different approaches, trying to balance nice artwork with the time we had in which to produce all of this. So we went with a pretty flat line in the end. So we had 3 or 4 days where we had a lot of back and forth between us and Charles and Adrian Salmon, who's responsible for the colouring. And once we had an approved design that we felt was a fair compromise between the look that we wanted and the time we'd have to produce it in, I started drawing up the kits, which is basically drawing up in Flash with a Cintiq, which is a big digital drawing board, Martin's designs, and doing full turnarounds of the characters from different angles. And then the first animator who came on board, Joanna, had also worked with us on Power of the Daleks, which was good. So she was prepared for the fact that not everything was in place or as we'd liked it to have it. And we also didn't have a library team, which you would typically have in a series or film, which is a group of people who are just building shapes and drawing everything up for the animators. So for Shada, we've relied upon the skills of the animators, really. Fortunately, a number of them are excellent draftspeople, and they've all brought their own sort of slant to them. Some of them have really got into Tom Baker in particular. He has a very big... We had a lot of back and forth about Tom's lip syncs.
Tom's mouth, yeah.
He has a very distinctive, lippy sort of way of speaking.
Well, he's verbose, isn't he? And he has got a very distinct action of how he speaks. So there was a lot of back and to in with that, I think. I think the first pass we did, we hadn't quite got it right.
Yeah, and showing his lower teeth was a big part of getting the right, the right lip syncs.
That kind of thing. So you can't just put a generic male actor's mouth on Tom, because it just doesn't. It does not look like Tom. Same with the eyes. Obviously, he's a very distinctive looking actor. So I think we revisited Tom a few weeks after we did the initial design to.
We did a whole new run of the mouth.
Try and do a new sort of run of mouths, so to give him more range.
It was quite an interesting process for me working with Martin, because we work in quite different fields. Typically for animation, for lip syncing, you have a set of phenomes of mouth shapes that you always use. So you have a shape for the M, which is M and B's, a shape for L, a shape for A, which also is I, a shape for E. So I would have a set of 9 or 10 shapes that I would want for any character for lip sync. But we really struggled with Tom, didn't we, Martin? And I know you were going through frame by frame footage of him trying to get the right shapes, but he never really seemed to be pulling an E shape when he was saying E, or an A shape when he was saying A. His mouth was just...
Well, this is the difference between my day job and yours, Anne-Marie, is that when I draw people, the mouths aren't, they're just either open or shut. You know, exactly. I don't have to do,
but it's
I don't have to do the motion of it.
Yeah, for you it's an expression. For me, he speaks very quickly.
Yes, he does.
So when he's speaking, you have to hit certain shapes, otherwise it doesn't look like he's actually saying what he's saying. Unfortunately, Tom doesn't often look as though he is saying what he's saying when you go through it frame by frame, so we had to take a bit of...
I think what helped you usually was you sent me the set of sort of mouth shapes that you wanted, sort of, what do we call it, Tomizing or Bakerizing or something.
Yeah.
So we'd have a generic mouth shape that was O, and then I'd just you'd scroll through the video and find a scene where Tom's saying something saying something with O in it, freeze it, and then convert that into the mouth shape. So that was quite handy. Yeah. But it's only really with Tom and maybe a couple of others, Romana, Lala Ward's character, that we've specified particular mouths, isn't it? The animators have sort of taken upon themselves.
Yeah, I think I basically made up most of them, but Tom was a real challenge.
It was like Pat Troughton on Power. We had to sort of we had to give a performance out of a flat 2D character. Which is a challenge, but you just do what you can with it, and hopefully it comes out okay. And I think from what I've seen so far of the rough cuts of animation, I think Tom's coming across as a fairly strong character in this.
Yeah, some of the animators have done some really lovely subtle work, and he shakes his head and moves and nods all the time. He's very rarely still. So somebody, for instance, Skagra, Christopher Neame, especially in the early scenes where he's in control and in power, he's still a lot of the time, which is quite a powerful pose. But Tom is constantly moving, so when you look at the footage of him and you're trying to, really analyse it for your animation, nothing stays still for very long. His mouth is so plastic and expressive, or is it not just his mouth, his whole face, his eyebrows are up and down, and he's a really interesting character to animate. Well,
his vocal performance, however many 35, 40 odd years on, I mean, it's still got that kind of sort of aggressive attitude to it. He's full of energy.
Yeah.
Even for the age he is in now. So you have to marry that, the visual material to that performance.
Something that strikes me as a layman when you're talking about, you've got a big list of animators and you say each one brings their own thing to it. So how does that stop it from being quite a schizophrenic work?
That's where you need the director. We give the characters to the animators. They have a storyboard. So a storyboard is when you take the script a number of storyboard artists will visualize it essentially. So they'll draw the characters when they come into a room, where they stand in relation to each other. They move the camera around. We're limited in how much we move the camera around in Flash because it's a 2D drawing. So if you want the camera above or to move upwards, it means we have to keep redrawing the character at every angle. It's not like a 3D animated character where you can move the virtual cameras around. So a lot of this is quite flat on to allow for our time and budget limitations.
But it's also useful in that we're aping a direction style that was prevalent in 1979 and not 2017.
That's very true.
So you don't have to have
fixed camera.
sort of, you've got a fixed camera, and Pennant Roberts, the director, would have been restricted in what he was able to do in a set of 3 or 4 walls. So that sort of kind of helps us a bit.
Yeah.
In that respect.
And also storyboard artists have been very clever in some of the framing, for instance, to allow us to be more efficient with the animation, such as close-ups or a shoot from the waist upwards, so we don't have to draw the legs if they're walking and moving around. Not all the time, of course, sometimes it's necessary. But just clever storyboarding makes a massive difference for the animation and makes it possible really to make a show like this in the time that we had to do it. I've forgotten your original question, Toby.
The original question was how do we stop it being a schizophrenic
So
piece?
Initially when we send the animators the storyboards, the animatic, which is a storyboard set to time with the audio track and the characters, and we give them guides on the characters, what the characters are like. Initially we probably sent Tom back a few times to say to some animators to say make him more animated, this is what somebody else has done, we need him a bit more like that, or no, you need to tone this down for that animator because, for instance, Skagra or Claire or Romana are much stiller characters. So you sort of bring it in that way by just giving feedback until we get it to sort of where we want it to be.
Now, I'm going to be a real layman now, though. So if you send it back to an animator, does he or she have to rub it all out and start again? No. Or do you just have to rub bits out or chop bits off? How does it work, practically?
A little bit of all of that, except digitally. So we're working on this program called Flash using a digital tablet. So we're drawing on a digital tablet instead of paper. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit more efficient in that sense. And you have Control-Z, the magic undo, which is a very useful tool. So yes, we do. Sometimes scenes need to be reanimated, but it's rare that they actually have to be restarted. Often it's a case of just going into a particular part of a scene and making him shake his head more, or what we had to do quite a bit is exaggerate the movement more. And this show is a very realistic style. All of us would have worked with very cartoony characters, which tend to be a lot more squashy, stretch and squash, more bouncy, and you exaggerate the movements a lot more. For realistic animation with characters like these, the movement's a lot more subtle. It's more like how actual people move around. But with Tom, you felt you had to push that cartoony element into it, so you did have to exaggerate the movement. And when you look at the footage, that's what Tom moves like. Because initially one of the animators was saying, oh, well, it's too cartoony for this style. And you say, just look at Tom. He actually does move that much. He does shake his head. He is constantly bouncing around for some of the shots. He's got so much energy, which he seems to be able to barely contain within his body. You can almost feel it trying to get out. So trying to get that into the characters was a lot of fun. And as I say, you just sort of get feedback and give the same feedback to different people until you get the character where it is.
And as a layman myself, looking at the footage coming through, there's no sense of a disparate, eclectic series of people contributing to this. It just looks like it's coming from one viewpoint.
Yeah, and that's something that's one of my main things, is to try to make sure it's all consistent. Hopefully it will be. Otherwise, that's back on me.
Yeah, because we've got the set, almost like how you say, the set painters, the set designers are creating particular sets for the interior of the spaceships or the college scenes. So they're kept as a kind of consistent style. And these characters who are, pretty much all based on what I've drawn and then Anne-Marie has converted digitally. It does give it a uniformity that doesn't look out of place.
Yeah.
But you also said one was hand drawn. So what's the reason for that?
Barry Baker he's drawing it on paper, and it's a very complex scene with a crane shot, so it's seen from above. So because it's shot from above and we've drawn all the characters flat on, as Martin was explaining, that sort of fixed camera idea, it needs to be drawn anyway. So instead of giving it to one of the flash animators, we've given it to Barry, who's going to draw it out on paper and use another program called TV Paint to colour it up in. So he's going to be sending that in any day now. We were just emailing about it this morning, so I haven't seen it yet.
So as we speak, it exists in theory.
Well, I hope it's more in theory, more than theory, because.
So if in your final DVD it's just a blank screen, something's gone terribly. I have to say, that happened when we were doing the commentary for Power of the Daleks. You'd sort of be going, and everybody, what do we think of this scene here? And as soon as I referred to something going on, there was just a blank screen for 5 seconds. Oh, okay, so yes, the lighting's terribly dark, isn't it?
Hopefully we'll have a scene in there the next time we show this.
And what interested me when we were talking about the recording sessions, because I was at the first one with Tom and Daniel Hill, but you said you attended the second one with
Martin and I
you both did. So tell me about that.
Yes, we went down to London to see pretty much the entire existing cast reprise their roles in a sound studio. So we were there most of the day, most of the afternoon watching them, and we went down specifically to sort of watch the performances, because it was still early on in the processes, so we could watch the performances and maybe sketch particular gestures or expressions that the actor themselves gave to the reading, and with someone like Christopher Neame, that was essential, because he brought so much to his actual reading of it. I think he was the last one on, wasn't he?
He was.
And he was fantastic to watch. I mean, they were all great at reprising the roles, but it was quite a fascinating sort of couple of hours, that, because it's something I'm not used to seeing in terms of my day-to-day job. So seeing the mechanics of it and how it works and how it's set up and how people approach the way they're going to reprise a role, which is, they probably forgot they did. It was really fascinating. Although having said that, I think a lot of them have done the reprise the role again, haven't they, in various
different
formats. But hopefully this will be the definitive one.
From an animation point of view, it was really interesting seeing the actors play the characters. And Martin mentioned Christopher Neame in particular. He uses his hands a lot, while being very conscious of where the mic is. He wasn't moving around much, but it was a very contained and subtle but very expressive performance, I found. It was really fascinating to watch, and how much he managed to get out of very subtle, small gestures and movements. So we tried to bring that into the animation of the character as well.
You certainly believed him as a villain.
Utterly. He was utterly convincing.
Yeah. And Daniel Hill as well. He's not changed virtually since 1979.
He looks remarkably similar, considering the number of decades that have passed.
Yeah. No, it was a very friendly and fairly happy sort of afternoon. That everyone seemed to really get on with each other, and they all looked like they'd enjoyed spending time in each other's company again.
Yeah, I think it was probably quite a special time to bring all of these actors together. It's 1979, nearly 40 years later.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah, for a job that you did that didn't actually get
never
completed.
Actually made. Yeah. Exactly, an unfinished project. So it's a real joy to be involved in finishing it now.
It's probably only Doctor Who that this situation would arise, isn't it? Really?
Yes, I wonder if there's an episode of Dixon of Dock Green somewhere where they go, we need to do that last scene.
I know we tried it. We had to do it with Dad's Army, but all the cast, with the exception, I think it was 2 members of the cast were still alive when we did the Dad's Army animation of A Strike for Fraser a couple of years ago. So, that wasn't. That could never happen.
And I want to touch on something that you sort of alluded to, the idea that, because it's animation, you could do, Charles had this idea of doing this sweeping thing with the bike. And is the great test of doing this is actually restraining yourself. I remember when the invasion was done, there was that they originally had, I think there was some, Tobias Vaughan had a tannoy announcement, and the animators had his face like Big Brother speaking from a screen, and I think they were told no, because that would never have happened in the original production. So did you sometimes have to rein in your imaginations to go, no, because this is this would be too much for something we're trying to at least suggest would have been made in 1979, even though it's a drawn version?
I think there is an element of that, and certainly in Power of the Daleks we were very conscious of being true to the sort of film noir style that was prevalent in the Patrick Troughton.
And the camera scripts as well, what was on the camera scripts. And
Yeah.
I think it is the same with Charles. Charles, the director and producer, he's very much about creating a fidelity to what would have originally been part of the entire show. So we're not going for like whiz bang sort of camera moves or anything like that. It's just got to stay as to the same pace and tone as the rest of the existing footage. So I don't think there was any sort of desire to start messing around with the form of the thing. Certainly in terms of storyboards, when I contributed some storyboards along with Adrian and Mike Collins and some other people participated. Yeah. Charles, I think himself did some, but he was very much sort of telling us to rein in the any kind of excesses we might have thought we'd bring to the board. So very much sort of point and shoot or stay on the same level, same angle, that kind of thing.
And the other sort of restriction, of course, is time and budget. So are the things that, had you been given longer, for example, because time is sometimes worse than money, isn't it? If you'd been given longer, what things would you have liked to have done in terms of either technique or just actually, practical things you'd have added?
I think the whole animation team would have loved to do the entire project hand-drawn, staying as true to Martin's characters as possible. But it wasn't possible in the time and budget, so therefore using Fash was a compromise, which I think worked quite well.
I think it's a great compromise, and I think there's a heck of a lot of it is as successful as anything I've seen in terms of Flash animation, and I don't think hand drawn. I don't think would particularly have added any more of a polish or individuality to it. So
we have tried to bring in as much or allow as much time as we can for elements of hand drawn where where there's space to do it, and where we can sort of show off a little bit with it and get softer animation as a result. But yeah, more time, we would have done more breakdowns, more drawings to make everything more fluid. It's certainly incomparable if you bring Power of the Daleks back on the table, because Power of the Daleks was so limited in terms of the time we had to produce it, because it had to be done by that date. So at least, yeah, there's a lot more animation in it.
The animation, yes, like you say, that there's more. I've noticed a fluidity to the rushes for Shada that was missing from Power, purely because of the time.
Power was very much a cut-out approach.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine a character on paper or cardboard cut out and literally sort of moving the limbs around from various fulcrums, whereas this, we've had a little more time to make it a bit more like actual movement and as I say, trying to stay true to the characters.
Well, and indeed, I know Daniel Hill actually went into a studio, a green screen studio, to give you some movement. So talk me through the process of that, again in layman's terms, for all those laymen who are listening. There are loads of them.
Well, Charles asked Daniel to come in for a few shots where he felt it would be useful for us to have reference, and just had Daniel sort of act them out in a green screen environment, so we could look at that if we were whichever animator was doing the shots could look at that and use it for reference for his sort of timing as well. I mean, timing is one of the main things with animation, as well as the drawings themselves. So what sort of pace he would walk at, how quickly he would move around. So it was really lovely having those reference points. And Charles also videoed the sound recordings, so those of us who weren't there could look at Tom Baker in particular, but the other actors as well, and try to capture their performance in the animation.
And when it comes to doing your sort of character design, Martin, how much is instinct, how much is scientific, how much is do you do any sort of tracing over of actual thing, or is it more free than that? And how do you decide which elements of a character to exaggerate? Can you actually put that into words, or is it much more instinctive than that?
It is instinctive because I do use Lightbox. I did use Lightbox with Tom. I chose 4 or 5 typical Tom expressions and faces and angles, and put them on the Lightbox and drew those out as pencil roughs, and then based each turn on that pencil rough. But the face is such a movable object. I mean, you can't just having one shot of someone. Doesn't give the whole story. So you start with I tend to start with a closed mouth shot, and then we can add sort of lower jaws, lower chins, mouths, different eyes, etc. But there is an instinct involved. You do have to get a kind of as close a likeness as possible. It's quite I don't know. It's quite a nice exercise basing a drawing on someone who exists, because otherwise you're liable to just create a kind of generic good-looking man, good-looking woman kind of thing. So it's a good exercise to be given a character to actually base a drawing on who actually exists. Because in a lot of my other sort of work, I'm just coming up with people who don't exist, just various generic characters. But yeah, having a particular actor or someone in mind when you're drawing something, it's a good stepping on point for then keeping a consistency of character throughout the rest of the programme.
And what about the fact that you are, and I think it's no secret, you are one of us, you are an actual Doctor Who fan, so how much does that inform the work, and how is it, the fact that your childhood love has become a part of the way that you earn a living, and now you are part of the great mosaic of people that have contributed to the history of Doctor Who?
It's very unusual. It's when you say Doctor Who's part of my childhood, so's drawing, and drawing has become a way of me making a living as well. So it's they're both intertwined. I mean, I think when I was a child and I was drawing, I'd be drawing sea devils and things like that. So it's amazing to be sort of 35, 40 odd years on, be part of a project that's that's means so much to me. And it can be, like anything, it can become a chore. It's not all roses, but every now and then you have to pinch yourself and say, no, this if 7-year-old me knew that he was going to be doing this 40 odd years later on, he'd have been hopping about for a week, bouncing off the walls. So you've got to sort of like keep your inner child happy every now and again, I think.
Well, what about you, Anne-Marie? Because it's fair to say I think your life has perhaps been slightly more balanced than mine and Martin's in terms of you. So tell us about your sort of involvement with Doctor Who, because you weren't entirely a stranger to it, but...
I wasn't a stranger to it, but I wouldn't pretend to compete with either of you when it comes to being a Doctor Who fan. It's been a real joy and a real privilege to work on Doctor Who, to work on something that's been part of everybody in the Western world's lives, really. Certainly since I've been alive, I've been hearing about Doctor Who, and it's a real privilege to be able to contribute something tiny to this amazing, ever evolving organic thing.
It's like Star Trek and Star Wars, isn't it? It's a touchstone of it's such a part of public consciousness and culture, popular culture, that you do feel there is an element of privilege in of bringing any part of it to the public.
Absolutely, yeah. And I know a number of the animators have been ridiculously excited as well about being able to work with these characters, work to Tom Baker's voice, work to a Douglas Adams script. I mean, that for me is a real joy. It's fantastic.
Yeah, we've not even mentioned Douglas Adams, have we?
Yeah, I mean, when Charles told me in November, it's a Douglas Adams script, I was just like, where is it? I need to read it now. And I literally stayed up half the night reading the script over and over, and it was just utterly chuffed to be invited to be a part of it.
Right, so you didn't know, prior to that, you didn't know what happened in Shada, what was it about, or anything like that?
No,
so
I have to, it was made before I was born, so I have to admit utter ignorance. But I was... there are elements of Shada which are in Dirk Gently's holistic detective agency,
Yeah.
so I had a slightly weird deja vu feeling as I started reading it, because I knew I hadn't read the script beforehand, and I just thought, this is really strange.
I've heard that joke before.
I've heard the joke about the 2 lumps of sugar, not sugar, and Professor Chronotis, the same name, and I was just thinking, wait a second, this is okay. So I realised the similarity then, but it's a great script. It's
Never
really
throw
fun.
anything away, I think he would have said.
Yes.
Well, he was a
Yeah,
big
he's
champion
really
of the
useful.
environment,
Yeah.
so a bit of recycling.
Yeah,
Isn't-
I have heard he didn't particularly enjoy working on it, but nonetheless, it was a joy for us to work on it.
Well, it's interesting because we run the risk, don't we, Martin, of because it was the great lost. It was an unseen, unused. Through it, we built. It was possible for Doctor Who fans to sort of build it up as this great masterpiece. So it's interesting to hear somebody who come, I guess, with no expectation. You still thought it was all right.
Oh, I absolutely loved it. But then anything Douglas Adams has ever written that I've read, I've loved. So perhaps I'm a bit biased as well.
And you mentioned your sort of your team of animators. So it's interesting the sort of what's the geography of this, because obviously now projects like this can be, because I asked you when you came here today. I said, so do you work from home? Yes, everybody just sort of works in their own bubble. So tell me about the practicality and where everybody is and how you get it all together.
It's extraordinary, really, because when I started in animation, it was still very much studio based, and I still do work in studios. But we are moving from an age where a production like this would require everybody to be in the same place at the same time, working together, to where we can do it all digitally. So the BBC have a big server called The Box, where we put everything up. The animators send me files as they finish them to both myself and Charles, and we review the animation. That's probably my favourite part of the job. It's just great fun seeing all of this animation coming in, seeing what different people have created and brought out of the characters. And they've been working with very limited kits, which I know because I created very limited kits. And I'm so impressed with their skills and talent and what they've managed to do with them. It's just a joy. So we're based all over. So I'm here in Manchester at the moment. Barry has just moved out of London. Joanna and Jane were both in Bristol. Kate is living by the sea. Everybody's scattered all over the place. And it's great. In fact, David, who's helping Adrian Salmon with the colour, is based in Iowa.
In Iowa,
So I think
goodness
he's
me.
our furthest away team member. So yeah, it's great. Charles works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so he's constantly emailing and on top of everything. And people send things in as they're ready, and it's great.
It's got that, because it's almost an international, well, partially international sort of project. You can look on Box at any point of the day and someone's contributed something.
Yeah,
so
at all sorts of weird
I get
hours.
up in the morning and I check up what's been posted in the animation folders the night before, and like you say, David's obviously working in America and he's posted stuff. So yeah, people are working all hours on this. It's a really good team effort all round.
Yeah. And I mean, partly that's animation where we work, and Martin's work is similar, where we work all sorts of hours. But I think because it's Doctor Who, people really are. It's a real love for many people.
There is that thing whereby you think, if you watch the final, well, I always will watch the final thing and think, oh, if only I'd stayed up another 2 hours and just finessed that part of it a little bit better, that would work better. But that way madness lies, really. You've got to sort of pass along the baton of the work you're doing. You can't have any kind of ownership of it in a team job. Nearly every sort of artistic sort of endeavour I've done that hasn't been a personal project. I've always been part of the project, and very rarely seen the end result until it's published or out on screen or what have you. So you do have to relinquish control of any kind of ownership of the artwork you're doing and allow other people to take it on and run with it, really.
Yeah, and sometimes that involves changing it as well, which can be an interesting thing to watch. But
Oh yeah,
sort of have to
absolutely, yeah,
embrace
yeah.
it a bit, don't you?
No, it has to. Yeah, if it has to be done, it has to be done. Yeah, I've refused now to be precious about things like that. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, I may well have sort of balked at the thought of someone altering stuff of mine, and I thought, that's not how I'd have done it. But now it's just part of the team, and it comes out for the best.
Absolutely.
Well, you sort of mentioned changing as you go along, so as experienced practitioners of your craft, you can sort of plan a job and go, well, this will probably happen, we'll try this. But as you were going along with this particular project, what were the surprises for you then, the things that were tricky that perhaps you hadn't anticipated?
Well, some scenes, to be honest, animation is a bit different to live action in that respect, because we work sort of in the opposite direction in some ways. In live action, I think if you're filming something, it's very easy to get the actor to walk in the opposite door or take off your coat, put on a coat. Let's try variations of this. It's all very quick. Whereas in animation, we have to tie everything down in pre-production because animation itself is such a methodical and slow process. It's very difficult to throw away scenes of animation because they'll have cost weeks and weeks of animators' work. So we tend to work a lot of those problems out in storyboarding. Storyboarding in animation is much more important and more, it's invaluable. Whereas in live action, for instance, you generally do have storyboards. I mean, you may have seen somebody like Martin Scorsese's storyboards, literally a scribble of a figure, maybe walking in that direction, but maybe not. Whereas in animation, I mean, if you look at the storyboards, they're very detailed. Mm-hmm. And we work out the problems at that stage so that we don't have surprises in animation halfway through animating a scene, having spent so much money and time on it that we don't have to go back and redo it completely. We have cut a few scenes, but we've cut them before we ever started animation on them, if they weren't really contributing something and they weren't really necessary for the story. There has been one scene that I've revised a bit, but it just involved reframing it a little bit, and a little bit of more animation needed to be done. But just because I think it was one of the early boards, and we were under a lot of pressure to get more boards ready. Because it goes back to not having enough pre-production time. If we'd had more pre-production time, it wouldn't have happened. So a board went through which didn't flow as well as it could have. But in that case, most of it was one of the shots I animated, so most of it involved just moving the fixed camera, essentially, just showing more of the animation on one side or moving the characters around a bit. So we didn't really have to redo much. We desperately try to avoid problems like that in the actual animation.
Preparation is all, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. It comes down to strong storyboarding, and Martin can tell you about that as he's been one of our storyboarders on this.
Yes, it was Charles brought me on. I wasn't contracted to storyboard, I don't think, but Charles.
I've done lots of things
Charles
that haven't been contracted to do.
Yes, I think we were. I'd sort of somehow got ahead of the curve in terms of doing the design work for the characters.
That's right.
And Charles said, while you've got a week drumming your fingers, would you like to do some storyboards? So I just started doing some storyboards. Up until then, I think Adrian started off doing them, and then as soon as the colouring process started, he was taken off. So there was a kind of rotating door of storyboard artists for a while, and part of my other day jobs, I do storyboards, very regularly. So it was I was just jumping onto that and going off the scripts that Charles had meticulously noted where each scene should change, what he wanted in the scene, what particular things were happening. So it was just a case of going off that. I don't think I did. I only did a handful of them really compared to the other storyboard artists. I was just brought in to do a bit of firefighting towards the end of the project, and then after that I think I was back on some more characters and specific poses.
That's right, there was a sort of balancing different roles throughout the production, partially allowing for the fact we hadn't had enough pre-production at the beginning. We were sort of scrabbling to get the characters ready for animators starting shots, and that was scrabbling to get storyboards ready to give animator shots because there weren't enough shots boarded. And then later we had all the storyboards done, but trying to get the colouring up to speed, and I think that's the area now where, as I say, the animation team are all going to switch across to help the colour team, because we're ahead in animation, so we're going to be finishing in about a week and a half.
We're ahead of schedule.
I know, it's almost unheard of.
That's
it's
extraordinary.
It's a very strange thing. I'm sure there'll be tweaking and things like that, so one or two of us will stay working on animation and just refining little bits that we haven't had time to do yet, but most of the team will help Adrian, because I think they have a lot of shading to do yet.
Well, it's ideal to be ahead of the game, really, because
Perfect.
we want to be able, I mean, touch wood, as we speak now, we want to have the opportunity to sort of look at it in a final edit and see if there are any things that are definitely, aren't working, or maybe need tweaks or something like that. That would be ideal, and it was something that was definitely needed for power, but because of the time restrictions we couldn't do. But to be able to review it maybe at some point right towards the end of the process and give us a bit of breathing space to do any kind of improvements would be great. So yeah, it's great news that we're ahead of schedule as we speak here now.
Yeah.
This is when you find you've all gone home and all, your computer's melted or the server's gone down.
No, just as I was saying that, I was like, I really hope we haven't missed a scene. What if we missed a scene? You may get a very different report tomorrow.
But as we stand, everything is going on according to plan. Because you mentioned, because obviously one follows these things on the internet, and one always looks at the fan reaction to stuff. And I remember when Power came out, a few people said, "Oh, this bit didn't quite work," and we were all at pains to go, "Yeah, but in the amount of time that we had for these things, and the amount of pressure we were on," and then people went, "Well, why didn't you get more time?" So why is it always a scrabble at the beginning with these things? What is the reason that we always seem to be up against it with projects like this?
I think we're all ambitious. Is probably part of the problem.
Yeah.
we want to achieve the best we can possibly do, and then there often isn't enough time or budget to do that. I say budget because you could just get more animators involved otherwise, and that would allow us to do what we want in the time we have. Power was particularly stressful, possibly one of the most time constrained projects I've ever worked on for the amount that they wanted to do. In fact, I know animators who were asked about it, and I asked some friends whether they'd be interested in working on it, and they just said it's not possible. It's not possible to do that. So
why didn't we listen?
I know. It was great to work on, but it was incredibly. I mean, we were all working just insane hours on it, and we didn't have any time, as Martin mentioned, to review things at the end and to see the obvious places where we needed to put more work in, and where a hookup is moving from one scene or one shot to the next, where it wasn't working because you have two different people working on the shots. And usually we're very good at checking whoever's done the shot, whether it's the person in front of you or behind you, and making sure that your character is in exactly the right pose, holding the same mouth shape and eye shape and everything else, so it seamlessly flows into the next shot. But when you're under fire, as we were with Power, there were places where we didn't have time to check all of those things. I think what was done in the time was amazing, but it was very much cut out, quick, snappy animation. Working with as much as we could, we relied upon having a strong pose per shot, whereas in Shada we've had time to animate smooth movement between the poses.
Yeah, that's one of the great differences from what I've seen between the two.
Yeah.
In terms of why it's always a scrabble at the beginning of these things, I think it's, from my experience of the three animations I've done in regards to archive TV, it's been that when you approach the BBC with the idea, as Charles has done, there's always a kind of like, well, pause, discussion, pause, right, go on, do it, off you go. Yeah. So there's always that kind, you sort of straight out of the bolt, straight out of the traps, almost like archive, headless chicken going, oh crikey.
Absolutely, an archive TV series and films seem particularly bad for that. Yeah. I mean, as we said, I was approached in November about this, and I didn't actually start work until June. So all of that time, if we'd had I could have had an extra month even pre-production, and just had all the kits done, lots of different shapes and hand shapes and loads of different breakdowns, so we could do much smoother turns of a turn of the head, for instance, or turning the body. As it was, the poor animators had a straight on view, a 3/4, and a profile from.
And you can't really, until you do get the official green light.
You can't.
For all the best will in the world, you can't be sat at home thinking, right, well, on the off chance, I'll just do a load of work on Shada in case it gets green lit, because we're all so busy. You
And
know,
also, it may not get greenlit.
exactly, yeah,
And
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
you've spent a month working on something that you'll never
Yeah,
get paid
that's
for, that
just-
will never be made, and you
Yeah.
need to pay bills, so you need to work on other projects.
So you do have to wait until that final button's been pressed, and then it is all hands on deck.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, interesting. You said how stressful Power was. So, did you have any misgivings about being involved with another Doctor Who project that was a limited budget and had to be done yesterday?
From the initial discussion I had with Charles, I knew that there would be a lot less animation and we would have a lot more time. That's a
Did you
difficult
believe
question. I did, and I made him prompt. And also, I think I have to admit the fact it was a Douglas Adams script clinched it for me, because I just love his work so much. I don't. If it was exactly the same schedule as Power of the Daleks, I don't know, because as I say, it's a privilege to be involved in it, but also you want to do your best work. And sometimes you think, actually, I don't want to get involved in a project that's not going to be our best work. But Shada has been a real. Obviously, if we had more time, it would be even better. But it's been a real joy to work with, and there has been a bit of space to review things and make sure things are working, and to send feedback on the animation and to refine it a little bit more. Whereas Power, it didn't matter. Anything that came through had to go in because we just had no time at all.
Shada's been a
Shada's
much
much
more
better. It's a smoother process.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't say it's relaxing or
No, we're still
an
working.
easy ride, but it's certainly been it's been a far easier prospect than Power was.
Yeah.
And how did Charles find you? I mean, Martin, you've been on you've been in the Doctor Who universe. So anybody who knows about Doctor Who has seen your work and knows your work. So I guess you were a fairly likely person to be approached. But what about you, Anne-Marie? Where had you worked with Charles before?
I hadn't. It was just a very lucky encounter from my point of view. One of my friends who was moving to Canada to work over there, Justine, sent me his contact details and said he was looking for animators, and mentioned what the project was for and asked if I'd be interested in working on it. So I think I sent him an email and he rang me and we had a big chat, and it came on board from that. And then I recommended some other friends who I thought might be keen to work on it. And I think, like with this being the second one that we've worked on, we're sort of getting a more refined process and a group of people who are very good at working in a specific style. The style that we're using is quite a realistic style. So it works for some people, it doesn't work for others. So yeah, I think it's coming together. This feels like it's a refinement of the Power. So it's sort of a learning curve, and I feel like it's coming together much, much nicer and more smoothly, and everything works better.
That's my experience of it as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess as you must have half an ear to these things, Martin, and go, well, they're doing a Doctor Who project that involves drawing. If they don't ask me, I'm going to be well annoyed. I mean, or did you keep your ear to the ground and go, oh, I've heard they're doing Shada, I better have a sniff that out?
Well, Charles contacted me. I knew there were several projects in the offing, DVD projects in the offing for Doctor Who that were being looked at. Some that didn't involve animation at all, but special editions of old stories.
Yeah, the Superior Marionation version of the Macroterror is under embargo. we can't mention that.
That sounds absolutely fantastic.
Well, I think they do say "stand by for action" at one point, don't they? in the story. I think so.
Brilliant.
So having come off the back of Power, Charles still wanted me involved in anything that came up in regards to sort of character design and what have you. And Adrian as well, who was he said a colourist. He was the shader he did the tone on Power of the Daleks. So he wanted us two back on board, and it was just a case of finding the right vehicle. Some stories were mentioned, stories that were incomplete, 1960s stories that were incomplete rather than whole stories. But we came to Shada, I think, because the cast were all still alive and able to sort of contribute voice acting to it, and it was less work. Had quite a prestigious sort of name behind it in Douglas Adams, and also the fact that it was not a lost story, but an incomplete story. So it felt like an enticing project that I wouldn't want to. I certainly wasn't going to decline. But he asked me. I didn't. I try not to go around looking for work in case the people I'm asking don't like what I do.
It's that fear, isn't it?
I prefer people to get in touch with me and say, we like what you do, would you like to do this for us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, because if they don't, you can just assume they don't have your number rather than whereas if you do and they go, no, we've got your number, we just never want to use it.
Live in blissful ignorance. Yeah. He's asking for trouble, looking for work.
Well, he gets mentioned a lot. He's got mentioned a lot throughout the past 50 minutes or so that we've been chatting. But he's worth a mention is Charles, who every time I see him looks increasingly nearer to death than the last time. So he is.
Don't we all?
Well, indeed. But I think Doctor Who's speeding up the process with Charles. So tell us about him, because he is the sort of mastermind of this whole thing, really, isn't he?
Absolutely. Charles is the person driving this.
Yeah.
And finding the stories, as Martin was saying, a few different ones were discussed and explored. He has so much passion for it, and one of the things Martin has mentioned as well is that he's very keen to stay true to the original script and the original story and characters and everything else, and it's really admirable. He just works insane hours. He's completely devoted to this and to making sure it happens, and he's involved in every single aspect of it. I don't know how he does the amount of work that he does, but it's amazing. There's nothing too small for him to get involved in, no minutiae that he's not interested in learning everything about it.
No. He really is. I keep saying he's indefatigable, and he just never seems to tire. But his workload must be absolutely terrifying, really. It's certainly not something I'd gladly take on board. Yeah. And to marshal an enterprise like this, which is sort of from such an eclectic and disparate group of locations and people, is nothing short of remarkable, really. It's his energy for it is boundless.
Yeah. He's utterly dedicated.
Yeah.
And he's a lovely, lovely guy. He's a great person.
Oh, he's
to
one
work
of the
with.
nicest chaps.
He's very approachable, open to everything, happy to discuss options. If you come up with different ideas or approaches for things, he's very open to exploring different ideas, which is great. He's a lovely person to work with.
Well, he did email me this morning to say, is there anything we needed from him? And it was like, well, unless you've got a good chapati recipe, or you want to remotely do the dishes from. We had a curry lunch, everybody.
We've had an amazing curry lunch.
Lovely
that was
curry.
fantastic.
And it's very interesting, of course, that when you were talking about the animation, you go, it used to be that these things were done in the studio, but now they're done. And I remember a day when DVD commentaries were done in a studio with proper microphones and somebody that knew what they were doing. So if this sounds awful, it's entirely my fault, because I've got a recording thing balanced on top of a food processor. But we've sort of cobbled it together, so I hope it's been all right for you, dear listener. Anne-Marie and Martin, the listener is at an advantage over us in that what they're watching is complete. So from here till hopefully complete, from here until it pops through into their DVD machine that they're watching this on. What are you hoping for between now and then that you've got to get done, and that your hopes and ambitions for the project, so that when they see is what you want them to be seeing?
In very immediate terms, as soon as we finish up here, I'm going back to finish animating some shots and reviewing some animation from the rest of the animation team. So we're hoping to wrap up the animation, as I say, in about a week and a half to 2 weeks, and then move into shading, and then we'll be pulling everything together. So Rob Ritchie is our 3D and compositor guru, so he's animating the Krargs and K9, and pulling everything together, doing loads of effects, animating the sphere, which you will see floating around, stealing people's minds. So we'll basically be supporting Rob in any way we can, whether that's, I don't know whether we'll help cobbling together some scenes and just getting things laid out for him or not. And then going through all of the animation. As we start putting the scenes together and see how it flows, then there will be little tweaks where we can refine little bits or add bits or take bits away. So it's the editing process as the shots are composited. So
Yeah, I'm well as of last Friday. I think I'd finished all the shots and specific shots and characters that I was meant to do, but I'm sticking around for the grim death really, and doing little tweaks and changes. When we get back this afternoon, I think I'm in the process of sticking 30 of Chris's heads onto 30 bodies because they're just slightly off at the moment.
super good.
So I need to do that, and there's a couple of bits and bobs. I think I may well be helping Adrian with the shading as well in a bit towards the end of this week, just so they can catch up. It's like I say, it's a real team effort, and we all pitch in as and when we're required. So I think I'll still be hanging around for the next sort of 3 weeks or so, I would have thought.
And how important is shading to the process then? What does that bring to the work that you've done so far?
Well, for anybody who's seen Power of the Daleks, we did a lot of the shading in character. There's a big problem with that when you swap the character around, or if you flip the character so he walks in from the opposite direction. All the shadows are on the wrong side.
Right. Yeah.
And it was one of my bugbears. It was one of, I think, everybody's bugbears, because it just looks wrong. So for this, we've coloured all the characters flat colouring. So literally one skin tone, one tone for the entire coat, or the scarf obviously has. How many different colours does it have, Martin?
Oh, don't ask me. That's Adrian's job.
It has about there's the olive green, the brown. There's about 8 or 9 different colours in it.
Yeah.
Tom Baker's 14-foot scarf which loops around. So
Animator's dream.
Well,
Yes.
Adrian was adamant that the last sort of 3 foot of each end of his scarf
has
should
to
be the
be
same
exactly
colour.
the same. Oh, I've been
And then
very
it doesn't
careful
matter about
that.
the rest of it. The rest
It doesn't
can
matter the order of the rest.
Yeah,
that's
the
right.
order of the rest can be anything, but as long as the tassels and the top 5 stripes are consistent.
From an animation point of view, it all needs to be pretty consistent, because you
absolutely.
can't have Tom in one scene with a green beside his face and then suddenly it's a red beside his face in the next one. So they're the exciting little things I have to keep an eye out for.
Because somebody will look as well.
Of course, yeah.
There were certain fans who I think were making comments about Power of the Daleks. Was it his waistcoat or something? There was certainly a discussion about his trousers. Patrick Troughton had tartan trousers, which I detested, and every animator's nightmare is something like a tartan pattern like that that's going to keep moving and strobe as you draw it, and also it has to be consistent every time you draw it, and it's very time consuming to draw tartan every time you want to draw a leg moving. So I was begging Charles at the beginning if we could just avoid all patterns. So I think Romana, we had discussions about how many frills Romana was allowed to have on her dress.
Yeah, because she's wearing a very elaborate kind of, I don't know, Regency style frock or something,
with,
isn't
with
she?
sort of spaces
lace
in the exactly with lace
flowers all up. So we really did have to simplify that. Otherwise,
that had to be trimmed down massively.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just trying to keep consistent is the main thing. Once we agree on something, that it's consistent throughout, so it doesn't pop and jump when you're watching it, and you don't notice the fact that 11 different people have animated this. And then Adrian Salmon and David, and I think Alan is assisting as well, they've done a run over the animation where they add the shadows later. So depending on where the light is coming, the light sources in the room, whether they're diffuse or very directional, they're creating the shadows around them. It means the characters are a lot more defined, softer and more 3D and believable. It's a much nicer look. So they're making a great contribution to the final look of the characters.
Well, and the place for trivia is in a DVD commentary track. So I'm always amused by how small the Doctor Who universe is. The week I did the commentary for Power of the Daleks, I went on stage at a comedy night that I've done every Tuesday for the past 20 years. You had never been to that comedy night before, and the one night you chose to come was the night that I happened to mention Doctor Who, and you didn't know who I was, and we'd not met.
My housemate mentioned you, Richard, because I think both he and a group of his friends have been going to your comedy gig for quite some time.
Right.
So he invited me along, another comedy gig. I knew nothing about you, but I walked in and it was Christmas time, and everywhere we walked into or out of were playing Christmas music except Toby's comedy night. I walked into the soundtrack of Doctor Who, and I had to stop myself.
My gig, I choose the music.
I had to stop myself because I'd been animating Power, so every single scene we started, the animatics were cut with the audio. and with the soundtrack. So every time I opened a shot, I was listening to that soundtrack. So I walked in and I was like, stopping myself going, am I imagining it? Am I now just hearing Doctor Who everywhere I go? I was looking around and I was like, no, it's okay. I think other people can hear it too. It's okay. So it was fantastic. We had a chat afterwards,
We
and I
did.
realised you'd been doing the commentary on the series that I've been animating.
And how funny, that week of all weeks, when we both been, was the week that our universe collided, isn't it?
Exactly that, yeah.
And so for other, I think, trivia fans, the pub quiz question that you guys can answer is, what connects the Archers to the Doctor Who DVD of Shada? Because we were talking about this in terms of body movement. Do you want to answer that one, Martin?
Yes. I was surprised to see when I looked on Box, the server, Charles had uploaded some live action footage of actors, like we mentioned earlier, Daniel Hill had to do some walks and some cycles round for us to base movement on. And Tim Benting, the actor who plays David Archer, was fully kitted out as Tom Baker, with the scarf, the hat, the overcoat, and just acting in the role of Tom for the green screen shoots, which was amazing, because I just wondered why anyone could have played the part who was tall enough, but Charles was adamant that Tim Benting had the was the right size and had the right kind of movement to get this role off. So that gives you an idea of how much effort Charles puts into every aspect of these productions.
Yeah, not to just grab somebody who happens to, get a
just
proper
get
actor, who, funnily enough, then at around the same time plays the voice of the aliens in the latest series of Doctor Who. So
yeah, that's right. So there's I should do a screenshot of Tim in the Tom Baker outfit, and it should be on the DVD really, because for me now he's canonical.
He's one of the other doctors.
Yes, he's
one of the extra doctors. Oh, well, bless you. Well, thank you very much for making this such an informative look at your work on the Shada DVD. We've managed to get, this, ladies and gentlemen, DVD was not supposed to have a commentary on it, and I think it's another indication of quite what goes into these things, is that we've managed to pull one off, largely thanks to geography, and these two again doing above and beyond their remit just to make this DVD as definitive as possible. So for that, and for all your other contributions to it, Martin and Anne-Marie, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Toby.
Thank you very much, Toby.
And thanks, dear listener. That's been the Shada DVD commentary. I hope you've enjoyed it and the rest of the goodies on this package. Thanks very much. My name's Toby Haydock, and goodbye.